I've walked side by side with depression for about 9 years now. My depression comes in waves. There are good years and bad years, good days and bad days, without any particular pattern. Depression has a mind of its own. For me, it's like being stuck in a web. Each thread is intricately and uniquely woven together in my mind to form a tangled mess that's difficult to get out of. When I was around 14, 15 years old, I noticed I was attracted to girls. I couldn't talk to my family or my friends about it, and I certainly couldn't tell anyone at church. I remember being on the soccer team here in high school, and some teammates were talking about girls who are into girls, and that made it obvious to me that I needed to be silent. Fighting alone is hard. I believe that God was waiting for me to fix that part of myself before I could walk with Him. I felt so alone. Then I started feeling angry and anxious and hopeless and sad and dark. There were so many times I would be driving home at night and think about driving off the side of the road into a ditch or into a wall. I felt like this life was not worth living. Sometimes, running a blade against the surface of my skin is the only thing that makes sense, the only source of release and feeling to my troubled mind. Spiritual warfare is also part of fighting depression. 2 years ago, I was taking a class about missions and seriously considered long-term missions for my future. We had a night all on the topic of spiritual warfare, and for the next week, I was the lowest and most anxious I had ever been. I couldn't pray for a week straight. I felt so isolated from God. Even though I knew He was with me, I didn't feel His presence. I was desperate, so I told my family and my best friend, and that evening they prayed God's peace over me. That night I had a dream. It was amazing and very vivid, and God's peace tangibly washed over me. I woke up the next morning with a renewed sense of hope, and I was able to pray again. That was the beginning of healing, and I felt the warmth of the light of God again. This past year has been light, dark, worship, self-harm, faith, doubts. But what I've come to learn is to proclaim truth to myself from in the midst of the darkness. Even if I don't believe it, maybe I don't feel it, but there is so much power in breathing out the truth. Psalm 77 is my favorite psalm. I read this psalm whenever I am in deep despair. It helps to remind myself to shift my focus from myself and over to God's truth. Proclaiming truth to myself can be reading a verse, reciting what the gospel is, singing a worship song, sitting down in church to hear about God, or just saying the name of Jesus out loud in my car. It can even be standing up and going outside to look up at the sky and the trees. I serve a God who is all-powerful and who loves me. This is a journey not meant for anyone to take alone. It's not easy to talk about. It's not easy to understand, even for myself. I know that this is something I could be fighting against the rest of my life, but I am hopeful that this can be used for good.